January 9th, 2025. Come, let us adore thee, by Reverend Pablo Martin. Hail Mary. Brothers, our first duty toward God is to adore him, to give him honor and glory, gratitude and love on our part and on behalf of all creatures, so that our life may be in ever greater communion with him. Plus, dear brothers, the Lord asks us, who are you and who am I? Our entire life depends on our answer. Where do I come from and where am I going? There is always a beginning and an end, an origin and a goal. My origin is in God, it is his love, and my destination is always him, to share his love, to take part in the reciprocal love of the three divine persons. Therefore, our entire life should be a path of return to him. It is to form a bridge that unites us to him, upon which there is always, let us say, ever more intense traffic of love and life. You love me, I love you, which is the soul's true breath. In the book of Revelation 4:6-7 we read, "Before the throne of God there was something like a sea of glass, like crystal. In the midst of the throne and around the throne there were 4 living beings full of eyes in front and behind, that is, full of knowledge. The first living being was like a lion, the second living being looked like a calf, the third had the face of a man, and the fourth was like a flying eagle." Likewise, in the prophet Ezekiel 1:10, each of the 4 had a human face, a lion's face on the right, a bull's face on the left, and each of the 4 also had an eagle's face. What do they represent? In all things, one begins from the external in order to move inward, from the sign to the meaning. Traditionally, they have been associated with the 4 evangelists: the man with St. Matthew, the lion with St. Mark, the bull with St. Luke, and the eagle with St. John. But I believe that beyond this interpretation, the meaning respectively is that of the 4 things we as creatures owe to God: to acknowledge him and therefore adore him, give him honor and glory, thanksgiving and love. Adoration means recognizing that we belong to God, our total dependence on him, his full right over us, and to adhere to him with complete awareness and will, with full complacency. It becomes love. The holy magi were not looking at the earth but at the sky. They left everything, forgetting themselves in order to seek Jesus. Arriving in Jerusalem, they asked, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We have seen his star at its rising, and we have come to adore him." Matthew 2:2. We were born to find him and adore him, to give him everything and to receive from him the true all. We adore with the body, with a gesture that shows it, such as kneeling or prostrating oneself, but above all, it is with the spirit that we express to God our adherence to him, to his will. Jesus said to the Samaritan woman, "The hour is coming, and is now here, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father seeks such worshipers. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth." John 4:23-24. To the tempter who demanded from Jesus an act of adoration, he answered, "You shall worship the Lord your God, and him alone shall you serve." Luke 4:8. Whereas men so often adore things, creatures, instead of God, and adoration becomes ever more the man who makes himself God. In being more, possessing more, enjoying more, the devil has invented a God that humanity adores and to which it submits as never before, the God money, instead of the true God, in order to be able to have, to possess, to do, to enjoy. That false adoration is also found in so many believers and devout people, even making use of the things of God, placing them instead of God, as the prophet Isaiah already denounced, 1:13. Bringing offerings is futile. Incense is an abomination to me. New moons and Sabbaths, assemblies, I cannot endure wrongdoing in solemn ceremony. Likewise in Jeremiah 7:4, do not trust in deceptive words from those who say, the temple of the Lord, The temple of the Lord is here. So often the difference between true and false devotion, between true and false adoration, can be so subtle that it requires constant vigilance. Louisa says in Book of Heaven, Volume 16, May 13th, 1924, I was doing my usual prayers, and while I was giving myself completely into the arms of the Supreme Will, I wanted to make my adorations in it to the Divine Majesty, and my Jesus, moving within me, took my poor soul in his arms and, raising it between heaven and earth, adored together with me the Supreme Being. Then he said to me, My daughter, true and perfect adoration is found in the complete accord of the union of God's will with the soul. The more the soul makes her will one with that of her Creator, the more complete and perfect her adoration becomes. And if the human will is not one with the divine, especially if it is far from God, it cannot be called adoration, but rather a shadow or a tint without color that does not even leave a mark. And if the human will is not disposed to receive the kiss of union with the Supreme Will, instead of adoration, it can become insult and scorn. The first act of adoration is to recognize the will of one's Creator in order to fulfill it. And if that is lacking, with words one may adore, but with deeds one insults and offends. And if you want to know the true and perfect model of adoration, come with me into the midst of the three divine persons. I do not know how, but Jesus held me even more tightly and raised me higher into the midst of an unending light. I felt myself annulled, but my annulment was replaced by a divine life from which so many shades poured forth of beauty, of holiness, of light, of goodness, of peace, of love, etc., so that my nothingness was so transformed by these divine shades that it was no longer recognizable, and it enamored the very one who had thus adorned me. And my sweet Jesus continued, saying, See, my daughter, the first act of the divine persons is the perfect accord of our will, and our will is so unified that one cannot distinguish which is the will of one or of the other. Even though our persons are distinct, we are three, but the will is one. And this one will produces a continuous act of perfect adoration among the divine persons. One adores the other. This accord of will produces equality of holiness, of light, of goodness, of beauty, of power, of love, and establishes in us the true reign of order and peace, giving us immense joys and infinite bliss and happiness. Therefore, the accord of the human will with the divine is the first link of union between Creator and creature, from which the divine virtues descend into her, as through a channel, producing in her true adoration and perfect love for her Creator. And rising within the same channel of union, she receives the varied nuances of the divine qualities. And each time the soul rises to immerse herself in this eternal will, she acquires so many new varieties of divine beauty that they embellish her. That is why I say that the soul who does my will is my joy and my contentment, and for my amusement I hold the brush of my will in my hand. When she immerses herself in my fiat, I retouch her and amuse myself by giving her, with one of my brush strokes, one more shade of my beauty, of my love, of my holiness, and of all my qualities. So for me it is the same to be in heaven as it is to be in her. I find the same adoration of the divine persons, my will, my love, and since I can always give to the creature, sometimes I act as a master painter and paint my image in her. Other times, as a teacher, I teach her the highest and most sublime doctrines, or again, as a passionate lover, I give and desire love. In a word, I use all my arts to amuse myself with her. And when my love, offended by creatures, finds nowhere to take refuge, nowhere to flee from those who persecute me to give me death or who force me to return to heaven, I take refuge in the soul who contains my will in herself, and I find my power defending me, my love loving me, my peace giving me rest. I find all that I desire. Therefore my will gathers everything together, heaven and earth and all goods, and makes them into one, and from that one all possible and imaginable goods spring forth. Thus, of the soul who does my will, I can say that she is everything to me, and I am everything to her. Finally, true adoration produces a transformation in God, an ever greater communion of life with Him, an ever-increasing identification with His will, being and feeling ever more like children before the Father. Jesus has wished to remain with us in the Eucharist, to form His life in us and transform us into Himself. That is why it is so important to be before Him, present in the most holy sacrament, whether in the tabernacle or solemnly exposed, in which case we not only look at Him with our spirit, but also with our eyes. It is a simple way of communicating with Him. He looks at me and I look at Him. How many things can be said with one's eyes? The gaze carries us to wherever we look. Obviously not with the body, but with the mind and also with our intention. And thus it creates a sort of bridge with Him, because the gaze is reciprocal. And over this bridge passes His grace, His light, His love toward us, and on our part, adoration, praise, thanksgiving, and love for Him. Thus we present ourselves to Him with our little notebook open, in which He can freely write His desires, His joys and His sorrows, His love and His life. In adoration, we must be like sunflowers, which constantly follow the sun that illuminates them and from which they receive life. In adoration of Jesus, we come before the true sun, which is Him, like little mirrors created expressly by Him, so that by looking at Him, He may reflect His light in us, to bilocate Himself in our littleness, in a kind of mystical incarnation, and He offers Himself to us as another mirror in which we may form our true image. That is what Eucharistic adoration is for. And to those who cannot physically go before Jesus in a church, He says in the first volume of Louisa, "Finally, regarding the visits you make to me and the acts of reparation, I have to tell you that I, in the sacrament of my love, which I instituted for you, continue doing and suffering all that I did and suffered during my 33 years of mortal life. I desire to be born in the heart of every mortal, and for that reason I obey from heaven whoever calls me to be immolated on the altar. I humble myself, waiting, calling, instructing, enlightening, and whoever wants to may feed on me in the sacrament. To one I give comfort, to another strength, and therefore I ask the Father to forgive him. I am there to enrich some, to unite others to me. I watch over everyone. I defend whoever wants me to defend him. I divinize whoever wants me to divinize him. I accompany whoever wants to be accompanied. I weep for the imprudent and for sinners. I make myself a perpetual adorer to restore universal harmony and fulfill the supreme divine decree, which is the absolute glorification of the Father, in the perfect homage He asks for but does not receive from all creatures, for which reason I have made myself sacramental. For this reason I want you, in response to this infinite love of mine for the human race, to make me 33 visits every day, in honor of the years of my humanity spent for you and among all of you, my children, regenerated in my most precious blood, and together with me, to unite yourself with me in this sacrament, in order to always make my intentions of expiation, reparation, immolation, and perpetual adoration. You will always make these 33 visits, at all times, every day, and wherever you are, and I will accept them as if you were making them in my sacramental presence. Let your first thought in the morning fly to me, the prisoner of love, to give me your first greeting of love and your first confidential visit, in which we will ask each other how we spent the night, and we will encourage each other. Likewise, your last thought and your last affection of the day will be for you to come again to me, so that I may bless you and make you rest in me, with me, and for me. And you will give me your last kiss of love, with the promise of uniting yourself with me in the sacrament. As for the other visits, you will make them whenever you find a favorable occasion to focus yourself entirely on my love. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Welcome to DivineWillApp, your home for growing closer to God by learning and living in His divine will. We are so excited to share with you this inspiring talk from Father Pablo Martin. His message on faith will uplift and guide you on your spiritual journey. Don't miss out on more faith-filled content. Subscribe to our channel, DivineWillApp, and hit the like button on this video to let Father Pablo Martin know you appreciate his insights. Together, let's deepen our relationship with the Lord and spread His word to every corner of the world.